Good day, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Maui. Today, October 20th, 2021. Today is the second part of this new series of a Maverick's guide, a Maverick's master class. I dare use the word. To creativity, creative expression, creativity of consciousness, the direct, intimate, I would use the word intelligent employment, engagement of discernible, chosen qualities of consciousness on the palette of one's own interior, knowing what is the brush, the keyboard, the camera, the hand, the heart, and anointing consciousness with chosen, deliberate immersion in states of consciousness. Art for me, Dharma for me, living for me is the artfulness of knowing consciousness, knowing it to the best of my ability in any given minute, hour, day, moment. And yes, there's all forms of form that art and life and breath and voice and hand and consciousness and wonderment manifest into the books, literature, paintings, canvases, theater, cinema, sound, music, poetry. The love of a mother in the artfulness of her breastfeeding her beloved. The art of Tantra, the art of love manifesting in intimate dynamic spaces together and or alone in communion. Art as making our lives holy, today's installment. Creating a more fertile lifestyle, if you will, and tending to that earth of beingness, inner beingness, in context to the form that we have and know. Creating a more fertile ground from which the innate seeds of my own unique expression, the infinite dimensions of memory embedded in this groundlessness of infinity, and to learn how to more courageously, bravely, authentically engage this cognitive earthness and deliberately create a more fertile ground of consciousness from which the seeds of events and memories and circumstances and all the things that live in the infinite history of inner beingness, from discernible memory and words and meaning to more subconscious experiences that we inevitably live with and don't really know where they come from or where they abide, except that they exist. And then there's this deeper substratum in which the world of dream, often in deeper sleeps, emerges and creates interior landscapes in the fidelity of that dream's pixelation. And that's the pointing today, to how to create a more fertile, if you will, inner environment in which the seeds of one's own unique expression of the novel, the art, the poem, the book, whatever, just lifestyle as art, Dharma transformational art, we're working on creating a more I'll go back to the Pali Buddhist word, bhavana, a more beautiful landscape, a more beautiful interiority. And the word beauty here isn't just the aesthetics of whatever we attribute to beauty. To me, it's the dimensions of poignancy to compassion, to insight, to trust, to that feeling at times where you just know you're tuning into your deeper raison d'etre and that inspiration. That inner field of trusting in the adventure and the miracle of possibility, challenging normal definitions and meanings that we give to the selection of words called our own unique lexicon of identity expressed through the portals of voice and sound and thought and action, and moving artfully into the evolution of meaning is what I mean by beauty. Finding in a kind of corporate word the why, cliched as it sounds, of why do I do what I do? Why do I classically get out of bed other than just simply the instinct of habit to answer the call of nature, to listen to the impulses of hunger, the need for physical movement, to make good on the promise of desire and vision and responsibility and the love of work, how to create a greater fertile interiority. So call it the inner Dharma yoga of luminosity, fertility. I would encourage you during these talks, should you be tuning in, I hope you are, and that it's inspiring something in you to take out a notebook, a pen, whatever it is, to take notes. What are some of the conditions that we can bring into our lives? The spices, the cinnamon, all the various ways in which we can create a more intimate topography, a more intimate recipe, a more intimate Dharma, a set of conditions that we can deliberately come back to in more moments of awareness and consciousness to pick up where we left off and begin to fertilize that field of interiority to create a more receptive, magical, miracle inner beingness. That's my point, is rather than forcing the pen, forcing thought, forcing the book, forcing the chapter, forcing the voice, forcing the poem, all of which has its place. We'll get into that over the time, but to relax the pushing into what is my art, what is my voice, how will I manifest the next dimension of my life, and come back home to that very unthinkably complex yet beautiful, and I would call it our own ground of our, it's like an arboretum. And what do we want to grow in that landscape? Taking care of one's heart, in other words. And so I would remind you to remind me, to remind yourself, to remind our friends, to remind each other, to remind our inner voices and different inner identities to nurture, supplement, to discern compromising behaviors and patterns of thought that neglect the magnificence of being born into consciousness and investing in, very much like my teachers in Burma would encourage me to see consciousness like a flowering plant, a bush, a tree, and know your nutrients to open that flower. And innate within that flower, at every level of opening, inherent, there is innate fragrance within it. We already are in evolutional opening. Aha. How easy it is to negate that beauty, that opening, that bhavana, that beautiful states of consciousness by just simply identifying for one brief nanosecond that darkness between the petals, which has its place. Shadow reveals light. But be careful of these negative, investigative, psychological, spiritual tendencies to evaluate that darkness and try to do what you can to overcome the dysfunction of a flower not opening appropriate to the pace that I want it. And we neglect, by investigating that darkness between the petals, and we go, aha, come back to the nurturing of that flower. What is your air? What is your oxygen? What is your soil? What's within that soil that is unique to you, that you choose to call just the most, I don't know agriculture and permaculture, but the most refined organic ways to bring life into that existing life source and contribute to those innate seeds. I'm going to get into that in this talk. Those seeds, what are those seeds? The seed of innate intuition. Intuition is just that, aha, whoa, it takes me by surprise and out of the normalcy of a conditioned thought or pattern or formation, and it puts a little bit of a smile or an insight deep into, the darkness of interior with a lightning bolt of aha, aha. That seed through that intuition. What is in the intuition? What did you learn? What are you now feeling as hopeful? What's giving you that sense of purpose and meaning and magic and the possibility of miracle? What is the dream being made real through that momentary kind of interior eclipse, if you will, something special. So, good day to you wherever you may be. I hope your heart is well, your body is well, your family is well, your friendships are thriving. You're keeping alive that beautiful, vigilant, resilient, tenacious, determined, ever so vulnerable, intensifying impassioned spirit. And make a list on the palette, if you will, of your emerging creative colors of expression. What are those qualities of inner beingness that are ways to anoint this already existing groundlessness of inner being with water, with air, with nutrients, and being a lover of plants, that special nutrient of spiritual vibrational presence. How well do you, how should I say, the art of making our lives holy. How to turn a corner from the mundane. I'm not one for chop wood, carry water, that type of behavior. There's something at this point that meditation isn't so much the practice of mindfulness as it is the evolutional reacquainting expansion of an already existing holiness made real because I'm engaging it and living within that light, living within that field of energy, of adventure, of trust, of bravery, of courage, of radical trust, of visionary North Star looking what's on the horizon of your hope, and you're going to make real on the promise of another hour, another day. How well do you live today? How well do you take off the conditioning of habit and live in more and more intimate conscious choice of what you put into your body, what you restrain from putting into your mouth, who you talk to, how you speak. And so art as lifestyle, the artfulness of thought, the artfulness of speech, the artfulness of behavior. And to me, artfulness is a combination of words. It's a deliberate play in the energy of originality with joy and communion of creating circumstances inside and outside and together with other and God and environment that are deliberate expressions of meaning and purpose and that just bring a smile to you. I mean, I don't think, for me personally, my art brings me joy. I don't struggle with it. I don't have that. I don't have writer's block. As you know, I don't have speaker's block. I don't have behavior block. Well, I do have a little bit of behavior block. Probably a little bit of intimacy block, a little bit of high denial block. Oh, no, denial attachment. Takes my voice away to even use the word. And learning more and more the joy of knowing that thoughts exist. And yes, they can be enemy and foe, but they can be ally and lover. They can be artist and making thought, conscious thoughts. Are you thinking the thoughts that you want to be thinking? You know, are you drawing images that you want to draw? Are you communicating definitions and meaning and vibratory formations of relationship based upon your choice with a high degree of miracle involved? That level of artfulness of thought. And then, of course, the fine, who could ever define how fine speech can get? I've never in a million years would have dreamt that over the last few years that my re-emerging into the study of classical Theravadan Buddhist literature, also through the literature of my preceptor, the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, reading these books. I mean, you don't read these books. It is an immersion in a psychedelically contained phenomenology, if you will, that's on a page, obviously, or on a flat screen if you're reading online. A psychedelically contained formation of miracle. And the miracle isn't just some phantasmagorical New Age wonderment. A deliberate literacy meant to liberate consciousness from the conditioning of its own fear. The art of contribution, our art as contribution, our art as liberator. First and foremost, and I'm using the word here as a synonym of how to nurture our own interior inner beingness, equally is also how to liberate it, how to create a more fertile ground to tenderly and passionately consecrate, I wanted to say water seeds, consecrate seeds. Seeds of imagination, seeds of wonderment, seeds of seizing upon dream formations of soul coming through the soil of inner beingness as a cognitive seed, releasing its treedom, its plantness, the Dharma seed, releasing its unique expression of liberation within your own inner beingness. The Buddha seed, we all have that bodhisattvic spirit seed. Are we nurturing it? And within that, writing books, singing songs, touring, acting, mothering, parenting. I'm not just, thinking of art in terms of the classics, but in turning everything into an expression of Dharma artfulness. And of course here, using the word speech. How aware are we of the intention from which we speak? That deep mindful awareness way down deep inside of one's own inner being, where you feel impulses that shape this almost invisible mosaic of motivation or intention. You can say a beautiful word with a malicious intention. And many people, ourselves at times, are unaware of that more predominant intention coloring the state of consciousness through that intention that overrides what was meant to be the feeling of the words that you're using. I love you could be said with hate. In other words, so intention. I know I was so encouraged in my Dhamma life back in the day when I was blessed to be in a monastery. Burma now is closed. I want to use the word temporarily. And the artfulness of truthfulness. For me, art, as I want to say, is both rooted and more solidified in my heart when it's rooted in truth and authenticity, and authenticity informed by integrity, and integrity and authenticity informed by ethical courage to maintain an alliance and a fidelity with truthfulness even under duress and complication, where compromise seems preferable, but truthfulness wins. And that level of dignity is both restored and nurtured and strengthened. Choosing words, like choosing colors on a palette, choosing letters on a keyboard and combining letters to create words in words within phrases, the potency of a phrase, just like use your liberty to support the freedom of others, a Aung San Suu Kyi expression of high activism art. Use your liberty to support the freedom of others. It's so rad. And to have a relationship, a growing, nurturing, intimate, deliberate, adventurous, courageous, mindfully aware relationship with words aren't just words, nor are they just frequencies, nor are they just colors on our interior palette made good through the promise of oxygen and air and ear and voice and to think of all the existential Broadway, if you will, the production, just simply to utter a phrase, make your life an expression of your Dharma art. Just to consciously choose those words. And if you were on a moderate degree of psychedelic, and if I were on a moderate degree of psychedelic, or if you and I were both on a moderate degree of psychedelic and sensitivity and the powerful vulnerability of seeing a baby born, at the same time seeing our parents die, and the poignancy of life and death so intimately felt. And right there, we're beginning to feel the magnificence of those words, make your life an expression of your Dharma art. Make your life holy, an expression of artful holiness. What does a word mean to you? And we usually talk, I say carefully here, at others. Many people are unaware. They want to be liked. They want to be interesting, which is cool. They want to be heard. And a lot of what's being said is an unrecognized motivation where the words aren't really being artfully communicated, because the need overrides the word and the meaning. There's something about a poet, not just in writing, but the poet in each of us, that deliberately, beautifully, mosaically, intuitively, passionately stumbles into the choice of her own word expression, language dance. And give ourselves time, like we do yoga and meditation, and to cook and to bathe. Give ourselves time to do language yoga, meditative voice. Not just chanting Hindu rhyming phrases over and over again, which has its place, but what are some of the words that you want to learn, and begin to play with those new vocabularies, and equally the artful formations of the emotions that embrace those words. So thought as art, speech as art. I'm just teasing apart some of the more visible components, if you will, of imbuing voice and auditory vibration, and the communication of meaning and purpose and information, and how to romanticize it, eroticize it, ubuntify it, beautify it, poeticize it. Just, am I inviting for each of us to become more and more our own, for lack of better terms, our own Rumi, our own Rodin, our own Rilke, our own Yasodhara, our own Sariputta, our own Gautama, our own Carl Jung, our own Freud, our own Dali, our own Aretha Franklin, our own Jimi Hendrix. I had someone write to me who was in high school with me and reminded me, although I've remembered it, but reminded me of back in the day, must have been 1967, where, I was naturally talented physically and was an athlete and played baseball, football, basketball, track. I loved movement. And then I was really into music because I had an older brother who was down on music and still is. He's an amazing photographer of top, middle, emerging, profound voices of creation. Check out his website, davidclements.com, or D.W. Clements photography. He's done 2 magnificent books. Is it 3? Going on 4? Yes, he just released a new one, Raising a Hand. Get his books. They're breathtaking images with he and his friend and colleague of named artists who are raising an arm for this very little known illness, disease that's almost always fatal, that only happens to young girls, called Rett syndrome. And he and his dear friend, Kevin Black, lost his daughter to Rett's. And my brother and Kevin decided, rather than just simply to grieve, and they grieved and they grieved and they grieved and they resonated in artfulness together, and they decided to dedicate their lives at this time. It's been, 10, 12, 15 years since Kevin's daughter died. I'm not sure exactly the time frame, to creating artful photography of artists and having them sign off on their images with their bios and beautifully written prose in these photographic books called Raising the Hands for Rett's. Look it up and get them. Send them around to friends. And all donations, 100%, all sales go directly to trying to find a cure for this terminal illness, making your life an expression of your art, a contribution, a Dharma art, not just the aesthetics of speech and thought, but your poetry, your music, your films. I think innately giving yourself the philanthropic motivation to deliver the best of you, to support the health, the well-being, the freedom, the democracy, the freedom. In Burma, for example, just going off here on a little tangent, I got radically turned on to meditation. And I never really coupled the word meditation and mindfulness and insight with art. But I learned within the confinement of the orthodoxy of the Theravadan Burmese school of classical experiential Buddhism, Dhamma, that although there are nuns and monks who have shaven their head, who wear and don the pink and the mahogany-colored robes, who have no income, no money, have consciously volunteered to abandon all enterprise and finances, not to even touch or handle or talk about money, not to own anything except a bowl and sandals and a razor to keep your head cleanly shaved, a sitting cloth. Within the orthodoxy of all nuns don't look alike, all monks don't look alike, all meditators don't look alike, but yet it all looks alike. And all enlightenments, do they look alike? Is it one enlightenment that fits all? Is there one nirvana that fits all consciousness and everyone kind of arrives at this fundamental trans-conditioned, centerless, essenceless freedom? When a fire goes out, do all fires, when they go out, go to the same place? Or is it just simply the absence of fire? And where does that absence reside? It never existed in the first place? Really? And so we're in a monastery where everything looks the same. And you go to a meditation hall, those of you who've been to meditation halls know that I go right back to Burma, for example, you see a hall filled with monks and laymen, and they're all sitting pretty much the same on the floor with their arms cupped and their hands cupped in their lap or palms down on their knees. The variations are minor. They're all with their eyes closed. And they all have what's known as the Mahasi-oriented Satipatthana Vipassana meditation instruction, which people think of as always the same. Oh, I don't really want to do, or I love doing rising, falling of the abdomen, as if that is what everyone does. And my point here is, although everything looks the same on the outside, when you begin to meditate, you begin to see everything on the inside, although there's tremendous overlap and similarity, and what appears to be some unique and common characteristics that govern phenomena. And you can kind of talk about them in familiar terms, about the characteristic, the manifestation, the disguises of love and compassion and all the various other mind states and physical sensations. But when you listen to yogis or meditators, as they're known, in a retreat environment with their kalyanamitas, their guides, their support, their teachers, everyone who's doing the same thing says something different. And good kalyanamitas know, as I understand it, although insight is the same for everyone, everything is impermanent, right? Let's bow at the altar of change. But change for everyone is different. The content is different. The pace of change is different. Is it one quantum physics technology, a meta technology that governs all phenomena exactly the way it is? Is the light speed and the speed of light and the sound of speed and the speed of sound always the same for everyone in every dimension of being, all beings the same in all locations simultaneously? Is there one quantum, trans-quantum physics that's the decentralized cognitive network of totality? Infinite novelty within this, what seems to be incredibly discernible matrix. But discernible at what level? Who the hell really knows how much we know, except we can really kind of guess at how much we do not know, obviously. The island of Maui is a small little microdot in the middle of the Pacific. It's, the largest mountain in the universe, or at least in our galaxy, or at least on our Earth. 7 miles deep. And my God, what is consciousness in relationship to the subconscious? And so you're in a monastery and you see this incredible diversity. You realize, my God, there's no need to mimic the goddamn insight of the person I'm listening to report the evidence of their own insight to their kalyanamita. And because of the habit of pride and fear and belonging to the cult of false actualization, I begin to say what I think the teacher wants to hear. Mimicry. Same old story. And you're unaware of that psychological pattern because you are in fear, you're in desire, you're in greed. And how many teachers are teachers, no offense to teachers, who basically prop themselves up based on the collusion of group lie? And they live in the pretense of an actualization, a realization. Generally speaking, anyone who says they're enlightened isn't. And nowadays, even if you don't say you are, but you teach enlightenment, you probably aren't as well, right? And so this is by way of saying that, oh wow, infinite novelty. I don't have to be a puppet. I don't have to be a clog in the wheel. I don't have to be a slave. I need to be disobedient to dogma, to orthodoxy, to the cult of conformity. And this is back to art. Art for me is another way of fortifying the pledge of liberty over conformity, which is, conformity is just an expression of inner totalitarianism. That's a bad seed, No offense, Nick Cave. It's a bad seed to have a totalitarian seed within consciousness. And so, wow, like when you're on a moderate degree of psychedelic, and you're with a really good companion, a trans shaman, a holder of psychic, emotional, physical space, your experience is holy. And you are anointing that holiness with grace. What is the meaning of felt grace? And how do we artfully play and nurture grace in that shared space of cognitive, trans-Rumi-esque naturalness? That's, I guess, what I'm really trying to get to a lot more and more in my life is, if I walk on the beach, it's just, you can't escape nature. I cannot believe how much I like not wearing sandals. Even to the point now where I just refuse to wear the damn things. Driving, going into Manas or Whole Foods or down to earth, walking across asphalt or pavement. There's something divine about taking off shoes and just downright earthing in reality. And there's something that comes through. I mean, I know I've been on Maui for 4 months. I know I'm speaking a little bit like a kind of, a low-dosing zealot, but why not nurture the plant, right? The plant of human beingness with deep nature. Walking in that water, feeling that deep, organic sand contour around your ankles and your toes, the impulse to contract based on the wind. You just want it not so windy, more wind, less rain, more rain. You just, in that dialogue, that inner tension, dynamic release. Same thing in a retreat center, same thing in a monastery. I learned more and more slowly as it was, no two of us will kiss alike, no two of us will dose alike, no two of us will hold hands alike, no two of us will do tantra alike, no two of us will cry alike, no two of us will masturbate alike, no two of us will talk alike, no two of us will use the same word alike. Unthinkable novelty. In Dhamma, as you know, just to reiterate this, Dhamma is a pointing to a lawfulness to art. It's a discernible cognitive art school. The monastery is an art school for the shaping and the releasing of consciousness for the purpose of expanding and maturing liberty. Liberty to dream as much as the liberty to overcome shortcomings, limitations, contractions, struggles. And obviously a lot of that coming to terms with dimensionality requires unthinkable, over and over again, either voluntary, inspired, or forced humility in modesty. Just when you think you've got it handle on it all, yep, yet again, that ground that I'm paying rent on or mortgage on or being bequeathed to live in based on the good services and generosity of others is pulled out from under us. Whether it be a car accident, the loss of a loved one through rejection or death or illness, the loss of income, the loss of job, the loss of career, cancellation and firings and all the other forms outside. And how to keep on keeping on, So at the source of this uniqueness, this novelty, this making our lives holy and artful through thought, speech, and actions. I'm going to end right now because I've got some things to do, and I'll continue this 11-part series on a Maverick's guide, masterclass to my creative process, both in lifestyle, in consciousness, and in form. It's just the next iteration of going from meditator to spiritual student to client to yogi, to coupling those words, those beautiful definitions and dimensions and occupations of engaging interiority with exteriority at the confluence of consciousness at the sense doors, and that heightened priority called the now, and illuminating that with discernible dharmas, deliberate expressions of art, realism, hyperrealism, post-realism, cubism, surrealism. Right there, let's just pause for a minute. What is your emerging genre of art? What are you merging? What are you drawing from in your expression? Who are the inspirations? I think it's very important to create fertility in our lives by not just holy figures alone, cool as it is, but increase the radiance of our spectrum of holiness. I mean, aren't the farmers some of the biggest and the best saints on the planet? Aren't the voiceless, impoverished, who bring forth a radiant level of ethical bravery to keep on keeping on, to hold their children from despair and starvation? Aren't they really our Buddhas as well? Yes, we all love celebrity and artists and actors and singers and musicians. I'm just saying, if you so choose, broaden your pantheon, your spectrum of hope and inspiration to include a greater radiance, if you will, of inspired intelligence to be the artist on your own expression of how you want to create your minute, your hour, your day. How artfully do you go about, as we do with our food and our bodies, the luxury of creating a beautiful day, not just emotionally, but how well do we set the table? How well do we cut the vegetables? How well do we undress? How well do we look in the mirror? The artfulness of listening and feeling more and more deeply. So I'm going to end today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of my life. I'm quite joyous to be a part of this series, because it's exciting some very special places in my soul, in my heart. And it's a type of ongoing coming out, because this series, these sharings, are really pretty close to essence for me. And I'm deliberately spending more and more quality time in the studio of my own spirit right now. Really, actually even holding today until the 29th in a type of sacred embrace to go in as intimately as possible to the cathedral of my own soul, if you will, to bow and to pray and to listen to my own unique goddess. Who is she? Who is he? What is it? You know, I am that is one expression of life. I am art. I am art in an evolving configuration of conscious choice within conditions to emerge within this great field of consciousness. What will I do with the creation of self and subselves in the dynamic interplay with friendliness and otherness and eneminess? The evidence of our lives being left in this field, those are the seeds, the collective memories, individualized based upon your dream made good promise on your day, your life. Let's pause right here as we end. 800 billion other humans, they say, live before us today, here on October 20th, 2021, on this beloved blue-green sphere of infinite molecules in a groundless universe spinning through eternity. Whoa, 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 whoa. Think that we are an expression of all those human minds. Now expand into all of those animals and birds and fish, and go more inclusive into all molecules of water, all flames of fire, all sounds, all sensations, all neutrinos, all photons, all light. You know, we are alive as both miracles and expressions, for good or worse, of this totality. To me, a recognition of this is in itself courage and hope, and the evidence of disciplined engagement to be the best that we can. I do believe that we have a responsibility, if not an obligation, if not a duty, to nurture and enrich this great soil of consciousness in form, in context to earth and to singularity and to multidimensionality. We have an obligation, a duty, a responsibility to nurture that great, mysterious yet discernible topography of totality. So my way of sharing with you, my hope, thank you for being in my life. Dream on, have an artful day, give yourself every imaginable joy and pleasure, and anoint your friends with gifts of thought and speech and poetry. Hold grace and compassion for those of us who are suffering, for those of us who we don't even know, and hope to see you back tomorrow, 9:30, here from blessed Maui. Thank you from my heart.